Use the diagram and given information to decide whether segment BD is perpendicular bisector, an angle bisector, a median, or altitude of triangle ABC. In first question, we have given in that BD segment is perpendicular to AC segment. I will use different colors to solve every problem. So for A, I will use pink. So we have that BD is perpendicular to AC segment. So we know only that BD segment is perpendicular to AC segment. So we can say only that BD in first example is an altitude. Why? Because an altitude of triangle is the perpendicular segment from vertex to the opposite side or to the line that contains the opposite side. In this example, we have segment which is perpendicular to the opposite side. So we can write here only that BD is altitude. Segment BD is an altitude. Next, we have given, now I will use green color to solve example B. We have that segment AD is congruent to CD. We don't know anything about the angle segment BD to AC. We know only that AD is congruent to CD. If AD is congruent to CD, it means that D is the midpoint of AC. So BD is the segment from vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. So this is the definition of median. We know that the median of triangle is a segment from vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. So BD is a median. Next, we have given that triangle ABD, this triangle, is congruent to triangle CBD, to that triangle. What it means? It means that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So AB is congruent to CB. We can write that BA is equal to BC. So if BA is equal to BC, then D lays on the perpendicular bisector of AC. Segment. Thus we have the converse of the perpendicular bisector theorem. we have that BD is perpendicular bisector. So let me write this. BD is perpendicular bisector because we have these two triangles are congruent. It means that angle ABD is congruent to CBD. So it means that BD divides angle ABC into two angles that are congruent. So BD segment is also angle bisector. From the definition of angle bisector is a segment that divides an angle into two angles that are congruent, because this angle is congruent to that angle because these two triangles are congruent. So it means that BD is angle bisector. What else? We know that median of triangle is a segment from vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. Because we had that these two triangles are congruent, it means that AD is congruent to CD. If these two segments are congruent, it means that D is the midpoint. So BD is also the median. Because BD is perpendicular bisector, it means that is also altitude, because an altitude of triangle is the perpendicular segment from vertex to opposite side. So this is also altitude. We have given in the question, we have given that BD is perpendicular to AC. So now I will use this purple color. So we have right angle between BD and AC, because BD is perpendicular to AC, and AB is congruent to CB. So this side is congruent to that side. So because BD is perpendicular to AC, so BD is an altitude, because an altitude is the perpendicular segment from vertex to the opposite side. So we have first that D is an altitude, because AB is congruent to CB, so it means that AB is equal to CB. So by the converse of the perpendicular bisector theorem, we have that D lies on the perpendicular bisector of AC. So it means that BD is perpendicular bisector because BD is perpendicular bisector, it means that BD is median, because median is a segment from vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. So BD is median also. And from definition of perpendicular bisector, we know that perpendicular bisector is segment that is perpendicular to segment at its midpoint. So that's why we have that BD is median, because D is the midpoint of AC. And of course, BD is the angle bisector, because we have that AB is congruent to CB, BD is congruent to BD, and D is the midpoint of AC, so AD is congruent to CD. So we have here two congruent triangles by side, 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 side. So by side, 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 congruence postulate, these two triangles are congruent. It means that these two angles are congruent, because corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So BD is the angle bisector, because BD divides angle into two angles that are congruent. And next question, we have given that angle A, let's use different color, we have given that angle ABD is congruent to CBD. This is only given that this angle is congruent to that angle. So it means that BD is angle bisector. We know that angle bisector is a segment that divides an angle into two angles that are congruent. Angle ABD and CBD are congruent. So it means that BD is angle bisector. And the last question, we have given that BD is perpendicular to AC. So we have right angle. Now I will use red color. These two segments are perpendicular. What else? And we have that AD is congruent to CD. So these two segments are congruent. So we have here that BD is perpendicular to AC, AD is congruent to DC. So because BD is perpendicular to AC, it means that ADB angle is congruent to CDB, because the measure of these two angles is 90 degrees. So angle AD, of course, B is congruent to angle CDB. And of course BD is congruent to DB. Segment is congruent to B, D. So we have side, angle, side. Here we have right angle too. So by side, angle, side, congruence postulate, we have that triangle ADB is congruent to triangle CDB. So if these two triangles are congruent, so it means that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So now, first, what we can say about BD, that BD is perpendicular bisector. Let me remind you what is perpendicular bisector. Is the segment that is perpendicular to a segment at its midpoint. So D is the midpoint of AC, because we have given that AD is congruent to CD. So D is the midpoint, and we know that BD is perpendicular to AC. So we can write that BD is a perpendicular bisector next, because these two triangles are congruent, so it means that these two angles are congruent too. So this is BD is angle bisector. Next, because D is the midpoint of segment AC and BD connect vertex with the midpoint of AC, so it means that segment BD is median, because median is a segment from vertex to the midpoint of opposite side. So this is median, and because BD is perpendicular to AC, it means that BD is altitude. We know that altitude of triangle is the perpendicular segment from vertex to the opposite side. So we have that BD is also altitude. This is my solution.